Welcome to the Intrinsically Ordered podcast. Today I'm joined by Brady to talk about his own journey of Catholicism, deconstruction, coming out, and probably some hot takes on the world. Welcome to the show, Brady.
Thank you for having me. It's awesome to be here.
So I scroll TikTok way too much, and I'm always hunting for people that I'm like, I think this person might have been Catholic to interview, and I came across your content. It's also a little bit about what you do on the internet, and then we'll jump into kind of your backstory.
Well, in terms of what I do on the internet, I don't really take TikTok too seriously. People are always like, wow, you put so much time and effort into your production quality. And it's like, not really. I just throw all of my crap into DaVinci Resolve and like put clips together and call it a day. I talk about on TikTok kind of anything. I make videos about whatever the hell I want. People always say, do you have a format? And I'm like, sometimes I'm more on the side of commentary, yes. But at the same time, I do a bunch of other random crap. I think my most viewed video is something like a Kroger ad voiceover or something random like that. I was like, okay, I'm bored. I'm going to make this because it's fun. It was trending at the time. But when I do commentary, because I'm a gay man, I end up talking a lot about like LGBTQ rights, stuff like of the sort. And I have often in the past talked about LGBTQ rights and my own experiences being a gay guy in relation sort of to how I used to be Catholic. And it's funny that you mentioned you're looking for Catholic or ex-Catholic creators, because I grew up in that sort of realm of life. I went to a Catholic school, went to a Catholic high school, read all of the books that they make you read in Ontario, Canada, and we will get into that later. I think you'll find all of these very interesting. I don't want to spoil it too soon. But I talk about how the church made me feel, without getting too explicit, like a piece of crap, like I was worth nothing, like I was a fuck up. And it was really, really terrible. And it had a lot of effects on me as like, I was 15 when I came out, right? So it ended up being something where it was like, it was really affecting my mental health. We will get there later if you want to ask more about that. But I do lives on TikTok too, and I end up talking a lot about how I talk about my experiences. I talk to other people about their experiences too, and I've offered a lot of people advice, and people have told me, hey, Brady, you really helped me. And I'm like, that makes me feel really good. I don't do this for the money. I do it because I love it. I do it because I have a passion for making things. So that's pretty much it on TikTok. It's not really too deep. It's just, I do it for fun. I like to talk about my experiences. I like to create videos. I'm a sound engineer, so I blew most of my money on sound stuff, as you can probably tell. And I have a Logitech webcam, so the video's kind of lacking, but we have everything else. But yeah.
As long as it sounds good. It's a weird feeling to post random thoughts on the internet and then have people reaching out like, this changed my life, or this saved my life, or this is some incredible advice, or I feel like this is the hug I always needed. It's weird to just like yap on the internet and then have that change lives. So it is awesome to hear that you're making an impact there. So let's dive into your story. What was Catholicism like for you growing up? Was it something culturally that the family did? Was your family an ardent group of conservative believers? What did Catholicism look like in your early years?
It was kind of a combination of conservative values and the fact that our family was just Catholic. I grew up in a very small town here in Ontario. Shout out to Sudbury, if any of you know where that is. Very, very much far north. And it's, when it's population 10,000, there's not really a lot of chances to see other things that are your lifestyle and what you grew up knowing. So yeah, I grew up going to a Catholic school. I grew up playing hockey. I grew up going to a Catholic church. I was baptized, confirmed, all the stuff that you would expect from someone in a town like mine. My family, at least in the time period of which all this happened, was very conservative. They have since changed. They are not like this anymore because, when someone comes out and they sort of enlighten them, it's like, it doesn't have to be this way. You don't have to hate people just because of who they are. Then they start to have a little bit of an epiphany, But for the most part, I grew up going to a Catholic school. That was my formative years. And I was learning all of these things. I had religion class. It was compulsory. I grew up going to church every Sunday with my grandparents in this really small, it was actually a really cute church. But if I ever walked in there now, it would probably blow up, explode into flames. I would not be compatible with that building anymore. Yeah, exactly. But it was religion class from K to 6. We ended up, we read a lot of the Bible. We never really got into the nitty gritty of like personal relationships and health and like sexual health and that until high school, obviously. It was always kind of put in the back of your head that like, or at least in the back of my head, that Brady, the plan for your life as a Catholic is to wait until marriage to marry a woman and then be happy with her for the rest of your life. And it was that easy. That was the only way. And that is what would happen to everyone. Enough said, final story, period, the end. But obviously, that's not the way that things work out for everyone, including myself. So I think you'll find this very interesting. When I was in 7th grade, that was when because like that's when they, in Canada, teach you sex ed. At least that was when they taught sex ed to me. And using the word sex ed is very generous considering what I actually learned. It was...
You did quotes around both the sex and the ed part of that.
It was very... It didn't prepare anyone for anything. That's all I got to say. It's like if you'd like to be abstinent, it can prepare you for that, but that's the extent of it. In 7th grade, though, folks from Ontario will recognize these little textbooks called Fully Alive. And it was basically religious propaganda, if I can call it that. It took the Bible and distilled it into a version that people in grade 7 and 8 could read and understand and sort of get the picture of the Bible. And it's sort of framed the Bible as this really positive thing. It'll help you live your life in a great way. You'll have no issues, and you'll be closer to God, whatnot, whatever, yada, yada, yada. You get the point. But I remembered this one key moment in 7th grade when I was learning. It was sex ed class. And sex ed didn't involve talking about how it worked or how you need to protect yourself, how to be safe, how to have safe sex. It was never about that. It was always assuming that no one's going to have it, which is fucking tone deaf. It's extremely tone deaf. I don't know. I don't understand why, side rant, I don't understand why parents are so against having sex ed taught to their kids. It is literally just teaching them how to be safe. That is it. It'll prevent STDs so much, and people don't understand that. It's like, well, I want to teach them, but you won't have the talk. That's the thing. Anyways, though, this one paragraph that we were reading out of this book, which for some reason was sex ed, at least in my high school, marriage is between a man and a woman. You cannot touch yourself. And sorry if this is too much for this. You can cut this one out if you want. But it's like, do not touch yourself. Self-pleasure is illegal. Self-pleasure is immoral. And then I remember it was referenced that it was like, if you sin with your eyes, then you should cut your eyes out or something. It's like, think about that one for a second. It's like, this is a bit ridiculous. You know, it's like people are growing up. People are discovering that. When you're learning these things about yourself, and it's like, maybe I don't want to look at a woman. Maybe my attraction lies somewhere else. That kind of messes with you. And it's like, you need to marry a woman. You cannot have relations with anyone else. This is immoral. Having moments of self-pleasure is legitimately like, it is a sin worse than murder or something like that is what it said. It's like, well, that's really setting a lot of people up to be fucking like extremely, extremely disappointed in themselves, you know? To really sit there and think about those thoughts, like it's literally nothing. And it frames these things as being like horrible, awful things that it's like the worst thing you could do to yourself. And that was like, you kind of mess with me, you know? It's like people are growing up. People are realizing these things.
Well, in the Catholic Church, there's the kind of the two-tier sin system. You got your venial sins, which are like you're mean to your parents, and then your mortal sins, which can send you right to hell. On that list, you have your murder, kidnapping, and self-pleasure. And then everything else, like those are on the same tier. Never ceases to baffle me that this is what's going to send everybody to hell. And Catholics always love talking about these prophecies of the saints that like souls are falling into hell like snowflakes because of sins of the flesh. And it's like, this is such a dumb, like everybody does it, and it's on par with murder. Strikes me as absolutely absurd.
That's what I grew up learning, and it had an effect on me for years of my life. Because for a period of time in 8th grade, I legitimately went full Catholic in an attempt to quash my homosexual feelings. And obviously that didn't work because I'm here now and I am gayer than ever and I've never been happier with myself. So it didn't work, obviously, but that was like the result of all this. And dare I call it indoctrination? This is actual indoctrination. It quite frankly breaks my heart that kids are still probably learning the same shit that I learned. And they're extremely, like, for some of them, I know it doesn't work. They don't believe it because they already know. But like, when you have a Catholic family, when you grow up knowing that like the support system is the church, you go to the church, you talk about your shit at the church, you realize that it's like, well, I have to fall back on this now. This is what's going to be my saving grace. Because in that period of time, I was also sort of kind of realizing, like I did my stroll down the underwear aisle at fucking Walmart, and I'm like, oh wow, this guy's really hot. And to think about that, and I'm like, am I actually feeling this feeling right now? This is not what was supposed to happen. And so,
were you told what homosexuality was? Like, were you told homosexuality specifically is a thing and it's wrong? Or was it more, we're upholding this heteronormative framework, we only see straight couples, anything beyond straight couples is bad? Or were you taught and condemned specifically for homosexuality?
I wasn't specifically told that homosexuality was wrong, except by my parents at the time, and very, very like briefly, not directly, but like kind of slipped in the conversation. It's like, oh, you're not going to marry a man, are you? And you know, that kind of thing. But never in school. I was never explicitly told that homosexuality was wrong. It was more so we didn't talk about it. No one ever mentioned it. It's you have to marry. It never talked about the alternative to not marrying a man or to marrying a woman, rather. It was always you will marry a woman. Point blank. But it never really got to that point.
I want to dive a little bit into your Catholic phase because I went through something similar. I realized I was gay in 7th grade. I came out to both of my parents, but because I never saw what it was like to live a gay life, I didn't know any actually out and proud people. And then I started making friends at my local youth group, and I was like, I'm gonna become Catholic. Ended up like discerning for the priesthood and stayed for multiple years. But I feel like every gay ex-Catholic man has like some stint where they go, Catholicism is the solution to me being gay, and somehow it doesn't end up working out. What was that year-long stint of being seriously Catholic and not working out? What was that like for you?
Well, this one's actually kind of funny in a way because it was like, how old would I have been when I was in 8th grade? Probably like 14 or 15 or something like that. I ended up dating a girl, and not because I wanted to, but because my friends peer pressured me into doing it. And to say that I felt absolutely nothing would be an understatement. It's like, this doesn't feel like a relationship. It feels like a friendship, which I mean, she was great. She was like, ain't nothing wrong with her, but it was like, this doesn't feel romantic. And even though it was supposed to, it's like, I don't have those kinds of feelings. And so like, even then I pretended to have those feelings. I pretended to be really into it. And I'm like, oh, she's so pretty, which she was, but like, it was never on that level, you know? And it's funny because at that time I was also playing hockey, and well, I played hockey throughout my whole life, and it was, you know, locker room, ultra fucking masculine, that whole culture really it had its toll on me. And it only served to reinforce everything that I was learning and putting into practice in that time, because it was like, okay, I have to date a woman because the church says so, because my health teacher says so, because my religion teacher says so, and because everyone on the hockey team will make fun of me if I don't do that. And so I did. And I really did start to put on an act, sort of period where I said, I'm going to try to get rid of all this, wash it all out of my life and pretend like it never happened. Started praying every night, praying for the feelings to go away, which they obviously never did. And every time it would resurface, I'd be like, think about something else. It was like I was genuinely playing mental gymnastics because a bunch of people were telling me what was right. And I didn't know that the way that I was perfectly fine, because everyone was saying, oh, you have to marry a woman. You have to marry a woman. This is the only way, no other way. If you marry a man, you're a disgrace. You're insert slur here. You're not going to be accepted. You're never going to be part of a friend circle again. That was basically the ultimatum. And I tried my very best to put on an act, and it worked. Somehow people didn't recognize that this was all a facade. But yeah, I went to church a lot during that period. I started praying a lot on my own time. I really, really did put on an act, and it only worked on the outside. Internally, I was burning up. It was absolutely terrible. I was dying. But that's pretty much it for that. It was an internal, external battle. But people didn't know that what I was doing was completely like a facade just to get people to like me. Because, you know, 8th grade, you're trying to make friends, right? That was kind of survival of the fittest at the time, unfortunately.
What was God like to you during this time? Were you simply doing Catholic things, kind of putting on this facade, or were you trying to figure out a supernatural relationship with this entity? Because I remember at the start of my Catholic journey, it was like, I'm doing Catholic things, and then I was diving into prayer and thought that I had this genuine relationship with Jesus. For you, was it internal and relationship-based, or was it just, we got to do the Catholic things on the outside so as to avoid the rainbow plague of sorts?
It was sort of the latter. It was more an attempt to quash the rainbow feelings rather than to say, I am just not that. Because inside, I kind of knew, but like at the same time, I perpetually denied it. I never allowed myself to have those feelings. It became sort of like Pavlov's fucking like hot man experiment in a way, because every time I saw a hot guy, I would look away. I'd be like, nope. Every time I had a thought about a guy, I'd be like, nope, didn't happen. It was in that way. It was like, and I had to like genuinely, when I came out, I had to recondition my brain to allow me to think about men again. That's how bad it had gotten. The mental gymnastics, the whole facade that I put on during that period of my life, it was more so because I wanted to fit in and because I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't, if I ever got found out. If people ever doubted my number one masculinity, which is now to me completely irrelevant. I really don't give a flying shit if people think I'm masculine or not. I am who I am. I don't consider myself even masculine or feminine. I am Brady. That is all I need. Nothing more matters to me. Masculinity, number one, how likable I am. Do I relate to people in terms of like, oh, do I get women? Obviously. I mean, I did, but like, it was fake. That's what happens when people, and I like, again, this is something that I have seen time and time again. People have basically almost repeated what I did in their own lives because like I only was Christian. I only did these things. I only pretended to like women because I wanted to fit in. I didn't want to be the odd one out. I didn't want to be the one to break the mold. It's the same thing replayed over and over. And I'm sure there's people who are going through something very similar that I did. Playing hockey, being stuck in this trap of I have to pretend, I have to put on an act because my family, because my friends, my support system all relies on like, it all revolves around religion, right? So that was essentially the crux of why it wasn't because I specifically hated gay people. I didn't even know what gay relationships were really. I didn't know all of that. I never looked into it. And I also didn't have the opportunity to see it firsthand because I was in a small town and people never did that in the public eye for reasons that were obvious. So I was kind of just stuck in like not knowing that there was an alternative. And I was like, well, I'm straight. There's no other way. This isn't happening to me. It was like the perpetual denial cycle on and on and on forever and for always.
I remember when I was going through that same phase, I saw a number of blogs and books about essentially how to do DIY conversion therapy, right? Do these exercises or be this masculine enough. And it was like, I never went to a therapist, but I'd internalized because I was reading about all of these things. When you were in your Catholic phase, were you reading blogs or kind of doing DIY conversion therapy?
Yes, absolutely. And not in a way that was like detrimental to my health, but more so like everything for me, like I fortunately never got to the point where it became like physical in any sense at all. However, it was more of the fact that I was, again, playing mental gymnastics with myself. I was like, see a guy, look away. It's not real. Completely deny that I just had the thought. Go look at, I don't know. Oh, look at that. She's cute or whatever. And it's like, obviously it wasn't fooling anyone. It fooled myself for a little bit. I thought I had quashed the feelings for a little bit. It absolutely didn't. In terms of like internal conversion therapy, it was more so of like the church says to pray the gay away. The church says to pray that you'll find someone who you love, to find a woman who you love. Sorry, keyword. Can't be anyone else, right? Because that's what they say. You're not allowed to have anyone else. It has to be someone who your family loves, and a man wouldn't be fitting into that category, at least at that time. And it was sort of that thing. It's like, pray that it'll get better. Pray that the feelings will go away. Pray that I won't have to stop fighting these demons, these pseudo demons, that kind of thing. That was basically the extent of it. I didn't go too hard on myself, but like even that got really difficult after a while because I'm like, it's not working, you know?
Were you out to anybody during either before or during your Catholic phase?
Absolutely not. I had came out after I renounced my faith and I realized, because I remember there was this one day in the summer of like the COVID pandemic. It was 2020. I believe it was sometime in, ironically, June that I had came out. And it was, came out, let's use come out softly because it wasn't really a full coming out. It was me accepting to myself that I was gay. And that was enough for me at the time. And I just sat on that for a month. And I allowed myself to finally be comfortable with myself and my thoughts. And like, oh, wow. I remember the first time I admitted that a guy was hot. And I'm like, oh, wow. I don't remember who my gay awakening was. I think it was Vinny Hacker or something. That's like, to my folks who are going to watch this podcast from my stream are going to know that, and they're going to laugh at me. And it's, I don't know. I like to remember that. It's like, yep, he was fully my gay awakening, but I allowed myself to get comfortable with it, you know, but I never really came out until, rather, the better way to say this was me being religious, me admitting that I had a faith, that I still had this belief system, did not allow me to fully come out and to step out of that box that I had painted for myself for most of my life. So that's pretty much it.
Tell me a little bit more about as the foundation was cracking. I remember in my own journey, I got to this point I was 20, thinking about like the rest of my life. I was like, no way in hell am I going to be celibate the rest of my life. Like, you got to have some really convincing evidence if you want to tell me I got to live that way. And so I re-examined my beliefs with like, they're asking a lot of me, and do they have proof to demand that of me? What was the kind of foundations of this religious era of your life like? And was it a sudden change, or was it a kind of just a gradual starting to reevaluate your faith and not accepting yourself?
I feel like the way that the sort of epiphanal moment, if that's even a word, sort of transpired was one day I kind of just like, because, during the pandemic, I had a lot of time to sit alone with myself. I didn't talk to anyone for legitimately months besides like Discord, because I had my friends back then on Discord, and that was pretty much it. And of course, there were a lot of, like, my first exposure to gay people, and this is going to sound really, really, really terrible, was on Discord. And that's why I was in a lot of servers where it was like, you wouldn't even expect that there would be gay people in it. They just kind of existed, because of course they do. This is real life. Gay people exist everywhere. And I didn't realize that. And I wasn't even homophobic at that time. Of course I had that period of my life where I was like, yeah, I don't approve of gay people. I was never like directly derogatory towards them, but like, because of my religion, it's like, I was kind of forced to hate it. And I'm still, to this day, I'm incredibly embarrassed that I was ever like that. And I hate that part of me so much, but still I still apologize for it every time I have to talk about it, because it's not right. And I know a bunch of people are in the same spot where I know in 5 years they're going to not be hating gay people, because they're going to be one, or they're going to be in the closet or on Grindr under a faceless profile, and they're going to still be hating. And it's like one of those two things happens. Either they realize or they don't, that kind of thing. But that day that I had that epiphany, it was kind of a combination of both. Like, I snapped, number one, it snapped into my head that I'm like, this is all bullshit. This is all stuff that makes no sense. This is all things that are provided to me on the basis of it being, well, it's tradition, so it must be true, right? It must be true that I'm going to fuck up in life if I'm going to be a loser, or I'm going to drop out of school because I'm gay. Which, fun fact, my mother actually told me, when I had came out to her, that I was going to flunk out of school because I was gay. We have never revisited that conversation since then, but I know she's very remorseful about that. My mom is now one of my biggest supporters, but she did say that to me, and that sat with me for years. It was kind of hard to fully renounce everything right away as soon as I came out, because people tried to reaffirm it in me. And it was like, we're not going to let you get away with this so easily. And even my internal thoughts were like, part of me thinks I shouldn't be doing this. Part of me thinks that this is wrong, that I'm turning away from God. But in reality, it was like, this is so much better. Like, I feel at ease with myself. I don't need a deity to tell me what's right and wrong in my life. I have morals outside of this. This really doesn't matter all that much. And if Christians really practice what they preached, then we wouldn't have this discussion to begin with, because this wouldn't be a fucking problem. But that's besides the point. It was kind of a slow and steady, gradual dissension from my core belief system of like, oh, marry a woman. If you have any other thoughts, just completely shut them out. I admitted it to myself one day. The pressure got too much to bear. I had too much time to sit alone. And I thought like, there's another way. And so I remember this definitively. I stood in front of a mirror and said, well, at the time I thought I was bisexual. I said, Brady, you're bisexual. And I'm like, I can't believe I just said that. And so I spent the next month doing like internal gymnastics to deprogram myself of all this. And again, Catholicism tried to reaffirm itself. There was always something that made me think like, oh, maybe I'm making the wrong decision by coming clean about this. That's pretty much what it was. It was a bit of like, it was like a roller coaster, because I'm 15 years of believing this one thing, and now I have to change this. And it was hard. It was very, very hard. But eventually I got to the point where I'm like, I'm comfortable with who I am, or at least who I think I am. And I don't need faith to tell me what is right and what's wrong. I know what is right and wrong in my head. I like to think I have a fairly good conscience in that respect. But it was tough, essentially. And it didn't come easily.
I remember the day that I came out to myself too. I was just like flying a drone around a park. And for the first time, just like getting to say I'm gay, at least to myself, like I felt like I could finally breathe. Because to your point, it wasn't like, oh, thought of man comes into my head, then like do mental gymnastics, confuse myself, and then like white knuckle it to try to get it away. It was just like, oh, like I can just breathe and think about other things and build a life. But it took me, wow, a few months between the time that I came out to myself and the time that I finally told somebody. What was that gap between coming out to yourself and starting to tell the world?
It honestly wasn't a very long gap. Once the train started rolling, it was unstoppable. And to this day, I'm still really proud of how fast the process went for me. I streamlined the fuck out of that. It started from zero. It was a bit of like a parabola, you know, a little slow start, and then we went right up. Fortunately, most of the reactions I got were positive. I figured that in my head, I knew who it would be a good idea to tell and who I should never tell and just cut them out of my life. During that period, I did a lot of personal reckoning, and I'm like, do I really want to be friends with this person? Most of the time, if I had to ask that question, the answer was no. Bye-bye, la. See you never. I don't want to talk to you anymore. At the most, we're going to be acquaintances. If you don't like me for who I am, that's tough shit. I don't want to see you anymore. Fortunately, I didn't have a hard time getting rid of those people, because you realize when things are that shallow, it wasn't worth it to begin with. And it was, I think it was about 2-3 months later when I eventually came out to people at my first job, which was Subway. And I have to say, some of the people that I had told at that job have been the most supportive people ever in my life when I had no other support system, because I had told, like, actually around that time, like the first people I ever came out to were people at my job. And then after that, it was my parents at home. And I had fucking amazing reactions at work. Everyone was like, oh, we're so proud of you, Brady. We're so happy that you finally admitted it. We love you just the same. You can make footlongs really quickly. So that's all we really care about. So that was that at work.
Subway.
Honestly, I still eat it almost every other fucking day. It's taste of home. But I essentially, that was the good part. And I feel like that kind of didn't prepare me for what was about to happen at home. When I told my mom, and the conversation that prompted that was actually really funny. Funny in retrospect. Funny at the time, it was not. It was horrifying to me. I remember I was at dinner with my grandparents, and it was like, oh, my mom noticed that I had, do you know the Apple, like the stock background where it was like the old Apple colors and it was like the rainbow? Mm-hmm. Even though it wasn't a Pride anything, it was just that old retro Apple logo colors. I had that as my background, so I'm like, oh, this is cool. And like on my iPhone 6S at the time. And my mom was like, is there something you want to tell us? Why do you have that as your background? I'm like, no. Even though there was something I needed to tell her, I just flat out denied it. So like, I'm sitting at the dinner table with my grandparents, who still to this day, one of them does not know. I will never tell him. He's too old. He wouldn't get it. I don't want to deal with that. That's my own personal decision. I am fine with not telling him. My grandmother knows. She's still getting better, but I have faith in her that over time she will eventually not look at me with a snark on her face when I tell her, oh my God, I have a man in my life, which at the moment I do not. But when I did, she was like, what's with that? Like, but that's besides the point. I wasn't going to obviously tell her right then and there at the dinner table with my grandparents, who at the time were like, and still partially are not really the people you want to talk to about that kind of thing. I said no. And that was the end of that. And they didn't even react. I'm like, okay. Then I got home from lunch with my grandparents, and my mom asks me again. She doubles down. She's like, are you sure there's something you don't want to tell me? But in a tone that's not so jovial like I am right now. She's like, are you sure? I need to know. And I'm like, well, if you must know, I'm bisexual. And you should have seen the look on her face. It was like the world had just erupted in front of her. She bawled her eyes out for 30 minutes. The reaction was not good. It was actually one of the worst reactions I've ever had to this day. I come out to people almost every other day when people ask, do you like men? Yes, I do. That is usually how that goes. It is not a deep conversation, but to her, it was like her entire world erupted in front of her. And at that time, I thought I was bisexual, right? And it's like, if anything, that should be the more palatable option for someone who's homophobic. But no, it fully did not pan out that way. It was rough. It was very, very rough. Burst out crying for an hour and a half. Or no, rather like half an hour to an hour. I try not to think about it too much, but like I enjoy talking about it for the purpose of telling other people my experience. It's not a fun subject for me to talk about, but for the sake of talking about it, yes. It was like, wow, I never would have thought that my own mother would have this reaction to me. I am the same person. I even told her that. I'm like, nothing has changed. I'm the same. And she's like, I remember this to this day. What the first thing she said after she cried for an hour and a half was, I want to accept you, but I can't. I'm like, why? I just can't. She had no reason. And then she claimed to have called someone. To this day, I still don't know who she called for advice on how to deal with it. And the way that she dealt with it was by never talking about it with me, except for when she had something negative to say about a gay person. Oh, you're going to flunk out of school. You're never going to have a family. It's like, that didn't help. It really didn't help. But yeah, it was a tough one. And at that point, my dad wasn't in my life. So I never told him until like 2 years later. My dad's reaction was very different. He was immediately accepting of it. At that point, me and my dad, like, because my parents went through a really ugly, nasty divorce, and I unfortunately had shut my dad out for no reason. It was still, to this day, I'm still remorseful that I did that. It's a different story for a different time, but that was what brought me and my dad back together. Me and my dad have an excellent relationship. I went to make dinner for him yesterday. So in a way, coming out was kind of like the thing that rectified most of the problems with other people in my life. It taught me, number one, that I shouldn't give a shit what people think. Number two, that people, when they see who you really are, even though it's not that different, it's just part of me that's finally coming out of the blue and that I'm finally admitting it to other people, they will understand you and accept you and be like, I'm happy you trust me to tell you that, or I'm happy you trust me to sort of give you that part of myself. At the time when I didn't want to fucking tell anyone, I told a bunch of my friends very slowly but surely over the years. It was quite the roller coaster. Most people had good reactions except for my mother, and she spent the next 2 years whining and complaining about it. And then I gave her an ultimatum. I'm like, okay, one day I got really pissed off. I'm like, if you don't accept the fact that this is the truth and you stop, or if you don't stop trying to push these narratives on me, that's going to be it. I'm not going to see you again. I'm out. And so from that day on, she made a commitment to get better, and she is 100% now. So it's an interesting story how this all worked out. It's like this brought a lot of good relationships back into my life, and it took a lot of the bad ones out. So in a way, I'm not thankful for anything more than coming out, because I got to scrap a religion which was telling me I couldn't live my life the way that I wanted to, even though there was nothing wrong with it. I'm significantly happier not being bound by the constraints of a religion that only values one lifestyle and seeks to desecrate the others, essentially.
And so you come out, people kind of self-select whether they want to be in or out of your life. But if I'm remembering correctly, then you're still in Catholic schools while you're out through the rest of your high school?
Yeah, that's right. But the thing is, once you emotionally and like physically distance yourself from like, oh, I am part of this religion class, which is compulsory still, despite my life and my experiences with it. I still have to take it. It's easy to just look at it from an academic perspective instead of, I believe in this. This is my life. This is my support system. This is just something that I'm learning about, is basically what it became. It was nothing beyond a surface level. It was not hard for me to interface with. It was tough for me to confront that history with like, oh, this was something that had a very negative effect on my life. But like the past was in the past for me, and it was something to look at, that nothing beyond that.
One of the big things you've talked about is that in kind of Canadian bro hockey culture, there is that hyper masculine element to it. How did some of those more toxically masculine how did some of those hockey and masculine friends react to you coming out?
The thing is, I never actually directly sat down with any of them and told them. They ended up hearing just through the grapevine. Because I wasn't going to be the one. I was too much of a chicken to go and even try to come out to them. I'm like, I'm not ready for this. I'm still very apprehensive about coming out to some people, because like you can tell when someone's going to be a dick about it. And most of the time my spidey senses are absolutely correct, because then they go to the other side of the bar or something and it's like, just see what that beep, beep, beep. It's like, thank God I didn't just say that. And it's unfortunate that has to be the case, but like, I'd rather remain safe than be honest and have slurs hurled at me, or nasty insults, you know. In that sense, that was kind of the attitude that most of the hockey guys had before I came out. But once they all got wind of it, and they all did very, very quickly, because they all have group chats, which I wasn't in, because like I never fit in with them anyway. Not because of that. It was more so because of the fact that I just didn't like the sport that I played that much. Hockey was more of a tradition for Canadians, especially Canadian folks growing up, rather than something that everyone loved and enjoyed. I played it because I had to play it, because I was forced to from a young age, because like you got to be healthy, you got to be active. It helps to make friends. And it did. For what it's worth, I had a lot of fun playing the game. The politics of the game were absolutely terrible, and that's why I quit. And I'll go back one day, play beer league or something, but like it's going to be a hot second before I do that. The way that most of the guys were before I came out was they shot the slurs around like it was fucking nothing in the change room. And that little part always kind of stuck with me because I'm like, this is what's going to happen if I come out. I'm going to be the center of all of these jokes and all of these nasty things that are being said towards gay people, towards trans people, towards everyone. And it's like, I don't want to be subject to that if I don't have to. So that was before, but ironically after, most of the guys, and I say most because a lot of them are still, a little wishy-washy. Most of them do not care, which is the reaction that I'm totally fine with that. I'd rather you not care. It's like, it's just a part of me. That's all. A lot of them ended up coming up to me and they're like, Brady, I'm really happy for you. We always kind of knew. And I'm like, I always kind of chuckle at that because like, despite my best efforts to hide it, part of it's always like, I liked Ariana Grande. I liked fucking Lady Gaga a little too much. And there was one time I remember I asked them to because I always had fucking hip hop and rap on in the change room before a game or whatever. And I'm like, hey, do you want to play fucking the new Lady Gaga album? I'm like, ooh, that was a little too much to ask for, I guess. And they all looked at me like
cover blowing, quite
literally. And I guess that was kind of the day that people like, I confirmed it in their heads, but like, whatever. Who says straight people can't like Gaga? I've been a monster for life. Even when I pretended to be straight, I'm like, you know what? Maybe that's the one gay part of me. And then I fully realized, no, all of me is gay, but I also still like Lady Gaga. So, but yeah, it was after the fact. It was most of the guys ended up being surprisingly okay with it because again, and this is to help their case. A lot of them just didn't know any better and they didn't realize that language was extremely inappropriate, even though it was being thrown around like nothing. We were 15 at the time. We were 14. Not to say that it's okay because of the age. It's absolutely not. But no one knew any better. No one knew a gay person. And then I guess once they figured out that someone they played with has been gay the whole time, it was like, maybe it's not so bad, like maybe Brady's just a normal guy who does normal and he just likes men. That is all. And most of them got the hint and they're like, we're really sorry for what we said. I remember this one guy actually apologized to me on behalf of everyone. I'm like, that's like, it's fine, but I appreciate the apology, but it's good to know that even the people who you think are against you have just a little bit of like compassion. So most of the reactions that I've gotten have been pretty good. Hockey, surprisingly, the reactions were decent. Again, nothing like, oh, I love and support what you do. Is like, it's fine. And that is honestly the bare minimum. And that's all I can ask for from a bunch of guys who literally made me feel like shit in high school and all that kind of stuff. It was a very surprising outcome, I will say. But of course, there are a few guys who I will admit were blatantly nasty, and I have seen them on Grindr. I'm not going to name names. Just like, I know. It's funny to think about, It's like, of course, that's the way it turns out. But yes.
I grew up in Minnesota, which I always joke is Diet Canada. So a lot of hockey culture, a lot of bro culture. And then as I became Catholic, I really only hung out with guys pretty much the entire time that I was growing up. And then after I came out, I remember people having this epiphany that they're like, wait, like the gay people that we talked about aren't like out there. They've been in the room the whole time. And then they magically do a 180 where all of a sudden they're cognizant of the fact that what they say even behind closed doors is to people that they're talking about as if they were out there. And then all of a sudden they start realizing like, wait, gay people aren't the people that I see on my conservative TikTok feed or on my Fox News. They're just my friends. And maybe I should have an ounce of compassion. And to your point where I too found that some people surprised me, or a lot of people had surprising reactions to coming out. Some people that I thought were going to do terrible, like did a 180, and then some people that I thought were going to do great did a 180 the opposite direction. But it is a very nice self-selection where you get to figure out, are the people that are in my life there because they like me or because they like a version of me? And that's kind of like that revealing factor. And so you're coming out, you're going through high school, you're starting to have these reactions, and now tell us a little bit about what your life is like now and how you're free of the high school kind of cliques. What is life going to look like for the rest of your life, being an out and proud man, education, careers, all of that jazz?
For the rest of my life, I've always made it a goal. Number one, I want to talk about my story in public. I have been constantly waiting for an opportunity to be like, this is my story. Maybe it'll help you as it has helped so many other people, And I actually, I kind of want to do like a version of, there's this guy that he had done a presentation at our school when I was in high school after I had come out, and I'm like, this is very enlightening. His name is Brock McGillis. You should look him up. He was the world's first professional gay hockey player, and he was the first one who was out. And his whole life is going around Ontario, or not Ontario, the entirety of Canada. He goes on tour every so often and talks to schools and talks to hockey teams about about his story coming out and how people treated him and the dynamics of being gay in a world where there's so much nastiness and there's so much hate, especially in the hockey locker room when everyone's like trying to have a masculinity contest. And he sort of boils it down to like, you don't have to be so uptight about this. We are the same we're the same people. There's nothing that's different about us. And all this apprehension is just based on prejudice, based on people who have these 80 million year old beliefs that we're different, that we're looking to have relations with every man that we see. That's like, that's a real one that I got, by the way. It's like, oh, do you like me? Do you think I'm hot? And I'm like, no, I actually think you're quite disgusting for even asking me that question. They act offended. It's like, so you were seeking approval from a gay man and you're mad that you didn't get it. That's pretty homosexual to me, if I've ever said so myself. But like, it's funny how that works. But yeah, I've always kind of wanted to, like, cause we keep in touch. I've done a few film gigs for him. So I'm like, if you ever need someone to, you know, be your wingman or to talk about, like, to have a different perspective on the issue, I'd love to go and talk about it. And I feel like I kind of do a version of that on TikTok where I talk about my experience. I talk about, hey, this is what it's like being gay in a small town. Here's my formative years, how this all came to be. And here's why you should do it. And here's why you should master the art of not giving a shit about what other people think. That's my like philosophy on life, by the way. Master the art of not giving a shit and you will have the best life in the world. And coming out kind of taught me that. But like, honestly, for the rest of my life, I just want to be happy. One day I'm going to settle down with a guy. I'm not going to get married. That's not in the cards for now, at least. I'm not interested. I just want to have like someone in my life. That is pretty much it. I would like to continue to tell my story. I want to continue to be a supporter of the LGBTQ plus community at large. And that's not just LGB, by the way. I thought I should mention this. I absolutely despise when people pull that crap. It's like, we fought for each other's rights. Look at the history of the community and remember that trans people and queer people at large are a big part of the reason why we're all here with the rights that we have today. I hate it when people forget about that. I hate when people try to separate the community. That's absolute bullshit, and I will say it time and time again. And if people like that ever ask me what I think about that, I will say they are disgraces to this community and they need to get educated. And I'm saying this in the nicest way that I can because I have lots of other words for them, but they're probably going to get you banned off of whatever platform this goes on, so I will leave it at that. But I will continue to fight for the community that I love and that gave me a voice when I didn't have one, and that has always stood up for me because it's important to me. Because I need people to know, people that are in my situation right now, because I know there always are other people that are going through things that are strikingly similar to what I went through when I was 15, 16 years old, that there's not one way to deal with it. You are the author of your own story. You do what you got to do, but remember that your story is not someone else's to write. You don't have to live for your religion. Of course, and you know what, I will say this, there are a lot of good Christians that I have met. Christians that genuinely embody what it means to be Catholic, what it means to be Christian, and to treat others with dignity and respect, even when it might not align with everything that they believe in. And I hate to say it, there's not a lot of them, but the ones that I have met, I have so much respect for them. All we ask for is your respect. Please be nice and genuinely live out the Bible says, and that is to treat others the way you want to be treated, to have empathy, to have compassion, and to not immediately stand behind your belief system and say that this is the reason why you hate someone. That's never, ever a valid excuse. But yeah, that's basically what I want to do. I want to continue to do what I'm doing right now. I love talking about this. I love telling people the deal with being gay. I like to give people a different perspective, you know, because a lot of times people on TikTok, I find, and I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal here, but a lot of people are just very loud and they're like, "Blah, blah, 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 blah." It's like, I don't want to listen to a dog bark. Like, sometimes you have to get on the other person's level to get them to at least remotely understand where you're coming from. So even when there's people who are nasty, even when there's people who are hateful, I try to deliver it in a way that's like, I understand why you might feel this way because I've been there, but this is not the way you should think. And if they have any sense of an open mind, they will at least listen to me. And that is all that I want. I'm not out here really to change anyone's opinion. I'm just out here to provide a perspective. And that's kind of what I want to keep doing. And it's very important to me that I keep doing it because the community that has given so much to me, I want to make sure that I give back in the only way that I think I can for now. But yes.
I love that. I think both of us do content not because we like hearing the sound of our own voices, not because it's for followers or for fame, but that there's some 7th grader out there stuck in the locker room who's never heard a queer perspective, who thinks that the only way forward is to live an inauthentic life, and that to hear stories that people made it out on the other side okay, and more than just okay, that are doing better living authentic lives, and that coming out becomes this starting line for life, where coming out doesn't solve all of your problems, coming out isn't gonna make you immediately fall in love like in the movies, but that coming out allows you to figure out who's on your team. It allows you to be honest with yourself, and allows you to move on. Really, like coming out is the starting line where it's like, once you can accept yourself and people around you accept you, now the gates are open for what the rest of your life could be. Not because being gay is your entire identity, but because it is the starting point, because you are the starting point, and you have to be you in order to show up. And I even think in my own work, I talk with a lot of prominent conservatives, from big Daily Wire hosts down to like religious fundamentalists, not because I think I'm going to change their mind, but because there's some young gay man out there who's listening to those voices. It just needs permission and a little bit of pushback to hear that you will have a life on the other side of coming out, and it's going to be better than living a fake life in the closet.
100%. And to add on to that, don't believe the conservative media when they tell you people are groomers, people are all those fucking talking points that are done to death. It's bull. I assure you, transgender people are just trying to use the bathroom. That is all. Leave them alone and they will leave you alone. We are all just trying to live life. That is essentially the point I'm trying to make. Don't believe the people who fearmonger you into believing that we're all a bunch of terrible people, that we're all out to get you. We're just normal folks trying to live our lives. Don't let the people who hate us dictate the narrative. And that's why I like to talk about this, because I want to provide a little bit of extra and be like, hey, this is bull, and let me tell you why.
I mean, gay people aren't groomers. They're not this evil cabal out there. They're not the people that you see on the headlines. Gay people are your siblings. They're your friends. They're the guy who's checking out your groceries at the grocery store. Like, it's when you come out, you don't get some card to this evil cabal of people in this voting block. It's just people living their lives, and that's all there is to it. It's not much deeper than that. On a closing note, any last pieces of advice for that young Brady who's living an inauthentic life, who's scared that his life's going to end if he comes out, who's too afraid to accept himself and is being told what to think? What's that kind of final piece of advice that you'd give to your past self?
Don't listen to the people who tell you that you're nothing because of a fundamental component of yourself, and master the art of not giving a shit. It is the best thing you could ever do with your life. Live you for you. Not for your family, not for your church, not for your friends. You will find friends. Friends will find you when you are yourself. And it sounds so corny, but like that is the best piece of advice I could give anyone. Once you stop caring about outside people and what they think of you, you will be the happiest version of yourself.
I love that. I for people watching, if you want specific how to have these conversations, the strategy, I just put out a video just called The Ultimate Coming Out Guide, which is like a decade of my own life, both the philosophy and like how to navigate those conversations. And Lord knows every queer person that's growing up watches the canon of coming out videos on YouTube. Everybody's watched the same videos when coming out, and you're going to see so many different ways to come out. How do you navigate those conversations? When do you know it's safe? How do you tell people? Do you tell everybody all at once? Do you tell individual people that there is no one right way to coming out, and there are so many voices out there if you're just willing to listen? Well, thank you so much for being on today, Brady. Where can people hear more of what you're up to and hear your content?
I'm on TikTok. I'm on YouTube. If you search my name on TikTok, you will probably find me. Would love to have you. I'm live a lot, so tune in if you got some time. It's usually pretty late, like 12 a.m. because I don't sleep. I never sleep. But yeah, if you're interested, I'm very much on TikTok. Come chat. Would love to have you. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm really, really happy to talk about this. It's the first time I've ever been on someone else's podcast. So I'm like, absolutely, I will do this. But yes, thank you all for listening. I hope that I can kind of instill some confidence in you if you are someone who was doubting the same way that I was. when I was 15 years old. Just know, again, you got to live for yourself and yourself only, and then everything will just fall into place. Not quickly, but it will. Just trust me on that.
Well, thank you so much for being on. For people listening, if you want to make all of this work possible, consider supporting on Patreon. And I got a Discord community for a whole $1 a month where we're having people navigating those coming out conversations, identity, religion, all of that jazz. It's a fun community to be a part of. And you can follow us at Intrinsically Ordered on all major platforms. Thank you all for listening.